Hello, my name is Richard Clegg. I'm a lecturer at Queen Mary University of London. Today I'm going to talk to you about what happens to stolen passwords. What happens if, in the phrase used in the trade, if you've been owned, or some people say pawned. So let's have a look. Passwords get stolen. Websites, even really well administrated websites, get broken into all of the time. If you're using the internet regularly, inevitably a website that you use is going to be broken into. So the question you might ask is, if that website's broken into, what are the hackers going to get? And maybe they'll get addresses, email addresses or physical addresses. Maybe they'll get credit card details. Almost certainly, though, they will get usernames and passwords. If your password is stolen, perhaps the first question you might want to ask is, how was that password stored? Now, why do you care about that? Because there's a lot of ways that websites might choose to store your password. One way, the old-fashioned way, and the worst possible way, is to store plain text. So you give them their password, you give them your password, and they just store that in a file. Job done. But that means if the password is stolen, it's game over for you. The hacker has got your password. They can now get into your account. The other thing the website might do then, they might think, let's use some encryption. So we'll use some kind of secret code. We will encode the password and then store it encoded. And when they log in, we'll decode it and see if the password was right. If the website's done this, however, probably, again, your password is lost. Because if the website knows how to decode that password, almost certainly the hacker can eventually find out how to decode that password. So storing a password that can be encrypted and decrypted is going to be a big, big problem here. And again, that means your password is probably gone. What about this? The website stores the password in an irreversible way. That means the website stored the password in such a way that not even the website can recover the password. They're also going to use something called SALT, and I'll get onto that at the very end of this talk. But how can that work? If the website can't reverse the password, how does it know that you're typing in the correct password? So let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at how we can use irreversible encryption to store passwords and to test that people type in the correct password. So this uses something called hash functions. There are a lot of hash functions about. It's a little bit too complex to get into in a talk like this, but you should think of them like this. A hash function takes a string of text and it turns it into another string of text, and it always turns it into that string of text in the same way, but it can't be turned back. It's a one-way function. So the hash function has no known function that reverses it and turns it back into the original. But how is that going to work? Because we want to know what this person's password is so that we can check they're typing the right password. So let's say I set up my account and I give the password, and the password is very secure, as written there, with the letters and numbers and an exclamation mark. And we pass it through a hash function, and that's going to turn it into some other string, some hexadecimal, some letters and numbers, and it's going to do that in a consistent way. And now we store with my username, we store the hash of the password, we don't store the original password. So we've stored in a file my username and the hash of my original password. And even if the website really, really wants to, it has no way of recovering that original password from the hash. So what happens when I try and log in? Very simple. I type my password again, and we pass it again through the same hash function. And if we pass it through the same hash function, it will become the same hash number. So now we can just compare them. We can say, if these two hashes are the same, almost certainly that's the same password. So if the hashes match the one stored in the file, we can be confident that that's the correct password. We can let the user log in. And if it's a different password, so this password is exclamation mark very secure, not very secure, then when we hash it, it hashes to a different string. And now when we match it against what's stored in file, we can see that the number on the far left doesn't match the new hash. No match, it's an error. The user has not got the right password and the user can't log in. So what can the hacker do if the hacker has broken into the website and they've got these hashes, not the original passwords? If they've got these passwords that are encrypted one way, can they still recover your password? Can they still find out what your password is? There's lots of things they can try. The first thing is what we call the brute force attack. And we call it brute force because it's just using muscle, not cleverness. We're trying everything. We're trying A, then A, B, C, and so on and so on. And not just with the letters, we'll go through the numbers, we'll go through the symbols. And just an ordinary, boring, off-the-shelf computer you can buy in a shop these days can get through 8-character long passwords in 2 hours. So if your password is short, just anybody's computer can crack it if they really want to. Another technique we might use is what we call a dictionary attack. And in this, a lot of people's passwords are words from a dictionary. So we just combine some dictionary words. And again, we do this in a systematic way using a program. Is the password aardvark aardvark? Is it aardvark abacus? We can set up a program, try all of these automatically, and often we will get people's passwords. We can also collect lists of well-known passwords. We can use dictionaries in many, many languages, so you will not, your password will not be secret just because it's in a not very well-known language. And also, the dictionary attack might check out those letter for number swaps, so swapping the E for a number 3, we might well try that with a dictionary attack as well. So there's a few techniques we can use, but there's another one that's very, very powerful, and this is called the rainbow table. Because the thing about these hash functions is they take a little bit of computer power every time to do just one. And if we need to do every single combination of letters, it's going to take quite a lot of computer power. So let's imagine we know a particular hash function is widely used in lots and lots of different websites. And that is the case. Websites tend to use the same hash functions just because there's not that many of them known to be secure. What the hackers can do is go to some dodgy website and pay a little bit of money and then download hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes of pre-computed hashed passwords. So somebody with a little bit of computer power has calculated hundreds of gigabytes of plain text passwords and what those passwords hash to. So now you don't have to do that brute force attack yourself. You can just download a list of passwords, look at the passwords that you've got from your stolen list, look at the hashes that you've got from your stolen list, and see if any of the hashes on your stolen list match any of the hashes on the rainbow table. And now any weak, vulnerable passwords that have been stolen can be reverse engineered, and we can get any passwords that are part of these hundreds of gigabytes of passwords on the rainbow table that's been downloaded. And the reason this is so powerful is these hash functions are a little bit computationally expensive to calculate, but it's very, very quick just to download them once they've been calculated. So this is quite a worrying attack, right? This is quite a worrying way that hackers might be able to get at these stolen passwords and reverse them. How can we save ourselves from this? We can't just create a new hash function, because if we create a new hash function, again, the same technique will work. They can create a rainbow table for that new hash function. The thing we can do is what we call adding salt. Salt, in this case, is some extra random bits that we can put on the end of our password. So let's imagine We have 3 users, Richard, Gabby, and Chen. And Richard has the password password. Gabby and Chen are more sensible and have more secure passwords. What we do now is we take the original password and we're adding on some random generated bits. We push those 2 things together, password and the salt, and that's what we're encoding. When the user wants to log in, they type their password and we've stored the username, the hash, and the salt. So the user types in their password, the login program adds the salt onto the end and hashes all of that to see if the password that's typed is correct. Why is that important? Because the rainbow table was for passwords without that salt. And we couldn't possibly create a rainbow table for each possible salt. That would be far too many of them. The original rainbow table was hundreds of gigabytes. Imagine how much data it would be to have one for every possible salt. So in this case, because of the addition of the salt, Gabby's and Chen's passwords are protected from the rainbow tables attack. Richard's password, probably still vulnerable because that would easily go to a dictionary attack. It would easily go to a brute force attack, even without terribly much computer power being spent on that dictionary attack. So this is how salt helps us to keep websites and passwords safe. So what's my advice? This is all a little bit worrying. What should you do if you're just a user, you just want to go about your day and you don't want the risk of hackers getting at your passwords? Firstly, set long passwords. We already saw that a short password can very easily be broken by a brute force attack. Secondly, don't you make your password a dictionary word or some clever twist to a dictionary word where you've changed some letters about. Thirdly, don't reuse passwords, because if you use a password on one website, it's broken into, and that website had bad security, so maybe they stored things plain text or in a reversible way. Now the hackers have got your password for many, many, many websites. So we're going to use long passwords, no dictionary words, don't reuse the password. That makes things very difficult to remember though. So my final tip is you probably want to consider using some software to manage your passwords, because it's incredibly difficult to remember long non-word passwords that are different for every website. Okay, I hope that was easy to understand. Thank you very much for listening, and that's the end of my talk.